I want to hear you say Hosanna with me. 1, 2, 3. Hosanna! Hosanna! Right, today we proclaim this incredible good news. Hosanna! We offer our praise and adoration to our King. Our King. Well, this is what the crowd did on what we now call Palm Sunday. They gathered shouting Hosanna. But let's remember, again, some of the bigger context here. So Jesus has been making his way towards Jerusalem. And he's told his disciples, listen, guys, I've got to go to Jerusalem and I'm going to die, but I'm also going to be resurrected 3 days later. And they really couldn't make sense out of what he was saying. They couldn't compute in their minds what he was talking about, this nonsense, this gibberish about dying and coming back to life again. They didn't know what he meant, but they were hopeful about what would happen when he got to Jerusalem. And so there's been this movement, this energy that's been building and building and building, because here Jesus has been performing incredible miracles. He's been teaching these incredible teachings that inspire people, that bring them hope, that get them thinking about new life and things to come. And so the crowds continue to build, and the energy, excitement, enthusiasm is rising. And on this day, as Jesus comes to Jerusalem, it all kind of comes to a pinnacle. This incredible moment where people spontaneously are cutting branches off of trees, waving them and shouting, Hosanna! Hosanna in the highest. They are so excited. They are so hopeful. They have so much joy about what they expect to happen. They believe and expect that God is going to do something incredible, something magnificent through this Jesus. God is about to do something. Of course, as they wait and watch and hope, we know how this week goes. And it's only going to be a few days later that Jesus will be captured and tortured and then killed. And so all these folks who are at this moment shouting their praise and thanks, some of them will be in the crowd a few days later yelling, crucify, crucify. How does a change of heart happen that quickly? What is that all about, right? What is going on there? But you can imagine how this crowd turned as the week went on and the energy turned against Jesus, and suddenly he's hanging on a cross, and you wonder what people were thinking in that moment compared to what they were thinking this day on Palm Sunday. Of course, in the middle is perhaps a fatal moment for Jesus. He enters the temple and he observes what's happening in the temple. And rather than worship of God, instead, there's a different kind of worship happening in the temple. It's the worship of money. And God's temple has been turned into a marketplace. And in his righteous fury, Jesus turns over the tables. And for the religious elite, it's the last straw. That was all they could take. That's all they needed to turn the tide against Jesus. But here we are today on Palm Sunday. And I want to make some connections to our gatherings on Sunday. And I want to challenge you to think about worship. And I want to challenge you to think about your feelings and thoughts in worship. Now, Ben already gave us some idea about what the word Hosanna means. And I want you to help me name that crowd that morning. That's what we call Palm Sunday. What do you think were some of the feelings that people were feeling that day? Name for me some of their thoughts, some of their feelings. What were they expressing to Jesus? What do you think? Expectations, right? They've got hopeful expectations about what will happen next, what's going to happen. Okay, what are some of their other feelings? What's that? They want to be saved, right? And of course, what they're expecting is saving from the Roman powers that have them in bondage, right? The Romans control Israel at this time, and they're expecting Jesus to be a political power that will save them from their political oppression, right? I heard another one over here. Excitement, right? They are excited. There's this energy in the room or on the street. What else? Joy. There's a joyfulness in this worship, isn't there? They're hopeful, they're expectant, they're joyful. This is exciting. They have something to feel joy about. Can you think of any other words that come to mind for you? Josh, what do you think? Pride? Are they proud of Jesus? Yeah. They're proud, and as they're excited, they're proud that one of theirs is doing these incredible things, right? Now, Jesus has actually, just before this, he's done one of his most amazing miracles, and that was he brought Lazarus back to life, right? And that's part of why this crowd is so energized. And maybe you heard that in the reading today. It said that the crowd that had come to the festival heard that Jesus was coming. So they took out their branches of palms and went out to meet him, shouting, Hosanna. And the verses just before this talk about how what they were so excited about was a number of these people in the crowd had been there when Lazarus was raised from the dead. And so this word was spreading like wildfire that this guy, Jesus, had these incredible powers. He could do unbelievable things. And that was part of the buzz and part of the energy that was around, was in this pride that Jesus was doing these incredible things. So how about us? When we come to worship on Sunday, aren't those our exact same feelings? We are expecting God to do something, and we're full of joy, and we're full of hope and energy and excitement that we just can't contain it, right? Oh, wait, that's right. No. Think about this for a moment, right? What are your feelings when you come to worship on Sunday morning? What are you expecting or not expecting? What are you hoping for or not hoping for? Do you come because your Savior is coming? Do you come with hopeful expectation that God's going to show up and do something? Do you come with a spirit of joy and anticipation about what God is going to do? See, I think that's what worship is intended to be for us. We don't worship on Sundays because we have to or because we're supposed to. I mean, maybe we do, but that's not the point. We don't gather for those reasons. We gather because we believe that God is in this place, and we expect that God is going to show up and do something. God is actually going to show up here, meet us in this place, and do something in us. Renew us, transform us, change us. We believe that God is going to speak to us in this place. I mean, what if we came to worship every Sunday with that kind of hopeful expectation? Do you think that would change our gatherings? Do you think that would totally reshape what not only our Sunday morning is like, but maybe what our whole week is like? What if we looked forward to every Sunday morning thinking, Jesus is coming? Man, I wish I had some palms to wave. Okay, maybe that would be kind of weird, but, right? I look forward to Sunday for a lot of reasons. One of the reasons is because we get to be together. But I know that God shows up here every Sunday. God shows up here in miraculous ways. In ways that sometimes I expect and sometimes I don't. But God is always here and God always does something. Now, I also want to get us to think about something from another angle for a moment. So I'm encouraging you today to come with hopeful expectation, right? Expecting that God will do something. And I want to remind us for a moment what happened with this crowd, right? They gathered with this hopeful expectation. And then midweek, things didn't go as expected, did they? No, in fact, things seemed to go opposite from what was expected. And those people, I'm sure, experienced incredible doubt, incredible disappointment, right? We can imagine all the feelings that they felt on Friday when this one who they had so much hope in suddenly seemed to be a fraud and a failure. And I'm guessing that we can all think of times in our lives where we feel like God has let us down. We can think of times where we expected God to do something and God did not do the thing we expected. What's that all about? But then, what happened on Easter morning? Something else not expected, right? Jesus rose from the dead. He came back to life. See, it turns out that when God didn't do what they expected God to do, God was actually doing something much bigger, something much better than they could have hoped for or imagined. He wasn't just saving them from political powers. He was saving them from the powers of sin and death. So we gather with this hopeful expectation that God will do something, but we also always remember that God is up to things bigger and better than we can understand or anticipate or know. And that in those times of disappointment, or those times where it seems like God doesn't seem to be there, that maybe, just maybe, God's up to way more than we can understand or know. And when we find ourselves getting trapped in this earthly realm and our earthly realities, we forget that there's a whole nother reality to this life that God's got, that God knows, and that we can trust that our God has us through all of it. And for me, that gives me even more reason to gather and worship with hopeful expectation, with joy and gratitude in my heart because of what Jesus has done for me and because of this good news that this life isn't all there is, that it doesn't end here, that there's an eternity of life after this. That's incredible news. So we gather on Sunday morning to worship a God who gives his life for us, who loves us and saves us, who gives us all things. That's a reason to shout, Hosanna. That's a reason to wave our palms and say, blessed be the name of the Lord. Praise to our God on high, right? That's a reason to come in excitement and hope and joy. My friends, we are never obligated to be here. We don't gather here because we should or we're supposed to. We gather here because we have an awesome God who does great things for us, and we get to express our hopeful anticipation, our joyful gratitude. We get to express to God in this place these feelings inside of us that want to come bursting out that God, you are awesome, you are holy, you are mighty. What if we worshiped like that every week? Like it was Palm Sunday. Like we had this hope within us that we could not contain. What if we worshiped like that every week? Let's pray. Gracious God, today we ask you to hear our shouts of Hosanna, of praise, of thanks. And we ask you to help us that even when we don't feel like it, that you can put those words on our lips and in our mouth and in our hearts. We pray, Lord, that you help us to be people who gather with hopeful anticipation, with joyful expectation that you will show up, that you will do something, that you are the God of all time and place. You are a God who has done everything. We ask you this week as we enter this Holy Week, that this can be a holy time for us, a time to celebrate who you are and all you have done, a time to shout our praises of Hosanna in the highest, a week to receive your gifts of grace and mercy and forgiveness. Please draw us into your presence this Holy Week and help us to shout Hosanna. Amen.